have dysbiosis, which is unbalanced good and bad bacteria in their gut. They could have yeast overgrowth or parasite infections. That's where it all starts. So say I have a baby that was born by a C-section. Babies born by C-section are born through a sterile field. They have no transfer of an immune system. They are then colonized with random bacteria from the newborn nursery. And then if they are bottle fed, that's even worse, because then they don't get any probiotic transfer, any immune system transfer. So already I can guarantee that they're going to have issues. They're going to probably have eczema, they're probably going to have food allergies, they're probably going to have asthma, because the studies have shown those babies that are born by C-section are more likely to have asthma, allergies, and eczema. And you wonder what the underlying root problem is. It was there in the dysbiosis. So if I put my moms on probiotics while they're breastfeeding and encourage breastfeeding, you will find that that doesn't happen in those babies, because you're already transferring the immune system artificially that they didn't get the benefit of through the vaginal birth. So then you look down from, if you don't have good, balanced, good bacteria, it creates this malabsorption, leaky gut situation, because if you have a boggy, irritated intestinal tract and you can't absorb your foods, well, of course you're going to end up with leaky gut malabsorption, inflammatory markers. It's just basically a big fire that is causing a lot of inflammatory things being put out by the body. That malabsorption, leaky gut situation, and electron microscopy actually shows you there is a space in between the cells, and these undigested food particles are actually kind of slipping through the cells in between them instead of going through the right, through the right channels. And that undigested food particle is finding its way into the bloodstream, and the immune system doesn't like it. It tags it for elimination and says, I don't recognize you. I'm going to tag you for elimination, and you're going to be, eliminated. Well, if you have this ongoing pro-inflammatory diet, and you have this leaky gut, and you don't have good bacteria, and say you just got on an antibiotic because you had a sinus infection, you're going to end up with even more unbalanced bacteria. You're going to keep driving that cycle around this little circle. So food sensitivities I'll talk about in a minute. That leads to nutrient depletion. So if all this poor processing, poor digestion, poor absorption of the foods is happening, you're going to end up not absorbing your nutrients. When you don't absorb your nutrients, you get nutrient depleted. So these kids with autism, ADHD, asthma, eczema, recurrent infections, that's the root problem. So we fix those things at all those different areas, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. So this is another way to look at it. You have root causes of disease, and then you have an eventual diagnosis of, the disease itself. So say you have this environmental trigger, you got some allergens, you got toxins, you got stress, you got some infection, you have drugs and trauma, there's lots of triggering events that then lead to something. A lot of parents or patients tell me, I was fine all up until this one point, and after that I just couldn't get well. And you have to kind of do some investigating in your own mind. What was that triggering event that led down to this landslide? Was it 4 antibiotics, was it, well, I got really stressed, I got divorced, I had, death in the family, whatever it was, there was always a triggering event that leads to a set of red flags. So not only you have the environmental trigger, then you have genetic predisposition. So we all have little snippets, little gene deletions or little quirky things that we have inherited from our parents. And those things render a person more susceptible to disease. So if you have like an MTHFR, it's sort of a big thing in the news, MTHFR deletion, then you have a folic acid problem, so your detox pathways are already at a burdened state because you can't handle those toxins that are coming. I am part of the Institute of Functional Medicine. It is actually an organization that teaches me a lot of these things. This did not come out of my head, although a lot of these are very similar to my ideas, and this just sort of refined my approach to how to make people well. So it used to be, and on the flyer you got, there was the 4 R's of healing: the remove, replace, renoculate, repair, and then they just added the rebalance part to their now 5 R's program, which I think is, in a nutshell, how we need to get well. So it all starts with diet, as we've heard a lot about. So which one is the best? Obviously we know, and we've heard lots about, the SAD diet is not perfect, and it is actually a perfect setup for chronic disease, inflammation, acidosis, and just an unhealthy body in general. So if it's not the SAD diet, then what kind of diet should we be eating to be optimally healthy? Vegetarian, you could go vegetarian, and I know a lot of people who do. You could be ovo or ovo-lacto or lacto-vegetarian, which is basically, depends on whether you add dairy to your vegetarian lifestyle, that would be a lacto-vegetarian, or if you eat eggs and dairy, then you would be an ovo-lacto-vegetarian. Or if you decide that you want to eat fish, you don't eat any other meats, but you eat fish, then that would be considered a pescatarian. So, a concerning thing I had with one of my patients that I just saw recently was parents were just allowing him to have an only vegetarian diet. And that child had such severe speech delay. When I saw him, I thought, we need to be asking these questions to these families. What are you feeding your kids? So even at my office, we have done a much more thorough diet history, because what we're finding out is that parents do a lot of different diets and they don't really have a very good reason for the diet that they settled on in the first place. And they need guidance, and we are their first their first interface. And it was, most people who are just on a very vegetarian diet are going to be depleted in nutrients, and B12 is one of the biggest nutrients they could be depleted in. They could be omega-3 deficient. So just know that that diet's probably not the perfect diet for everyone, and you would need to supplement vitamins if you were doing a all vegetarian diet. You could be vegan. Vegan is much harder than vegetarian. Basically, vegetarians eat grains and beans, legumes, nuts, seeds, fruits, and vegetables. They don't eat any meat unless I said if they were pescatarian. The vegans don't eat egg or dairy or any animal products, anything derived from animal products, including makeup and things. And also they don't eat anything with honey. So the next diet would be a paleo diet, and that would be the Paleolithic or the caveman diet, if you've heard of it spoken about in those terms. It consists mainly of your fish, your grass-fed, pasture-raised meats, your vegetables, your fruit, your root vegetables, your mushrooms, your nuts, but you do not eat grains. You don't eat legumes or dairy products. Minimal salt, refined sugar, processed oils, all those things are off the list. And according to Dr. Vasquez, who's part of the IFM, I was up in New York a couple weeks ago at a conference, and his favorite diet is the paleo diet. But he also mentioned that adding a little bit of olive oil, he felt like there was a Mediterranean sort of paleo plus type of diet would be okay, because I think we do want to eat a little chocolate. We do want to enjoy our red wine, a little bit is okay, a lot, addictions, not okay. But he also said on like the Mediterranean diet, you want to skip the pasta. That's a huge part of the Mediterranean diet, the pasta, the wheat. They're all, the potatoes, they're pro-inflammatory. They promote this small intestinal bacterial overgrowth sort of syndrome. So Mediterranean plus or a paleo plus type of diet is probably a good idea.